Hello, and welcome to South Asia Diary with me, Mariam Wardak. Our cover story tonight is from Afghanistan. Last week, a massive earthquake ripped through the country. At last count, more than 1,000 people were killed. It was the first major natural disaster under the new Taliban regime, and needless to say, they were caught off guard. In the end, aid agencies had to step in. By the time help came, it was too late for many survivors. Multiple questions linger in the aftermath of this tragedy. Why has Afghanistan witnessed so many earthquakes? Why was there no disaster preparedness? And has the Taliban failed in tackling their first major challenge? In today's episode, we answer these questions. Also on the show,
Nepal's cabinet drops a proposal to partner with the US Army amid pressure from neighboring China. How did this Himalayan state become a theatre of the new Cold War? Bangladesh's meteoric economic rise has come at a steep cost, the death of its once mighty rivers. India is all set to roll out 5G internet connectivity by the end of 2022. Will the 5G revolution resolve India's internet speed woes? In northern Sri Lanka, the Tamil minority says even protesting is a luxury. Find out how the economic crisis has revealed the north-south divide in the country.
more than 1,000 Afghans were killed in a massive earthquake last week. The country was simply not prepared for the disaster. It was also a big test for the new Taliban regime in Kabul. How did they respond to this tragedy? Why are earthquakes so common in Afghanistan? We find out.
Mass graves in the middle of nowhere. Homes and offices reduced to rubble. These are the scenes in Afghanistan's east, just days after a deadly earthquake ripped through the region. The tremors were the worst in decades, measuring 5.9 on the Richter scale. In the rugged east, life was already tough after the Taliban's conquest. The earthquake has made it a nightmare.
It was 1:30, after midnight. We were sleeping when the quake began. We all woke up and ran downstairs. Children were with us. My brother was sleeping in the other room there. He was trapped under the rubble. We tried and saved him.
As the dust settled, the destruction was evident. More than 1,000 people killed, hundreds of houses destroyed, and possibly dozens of survivors buried under the rubble. All eyes were on the Taliban leaders. This was the first major disaster under their new rule. How would they respond? As time passed, we found the answer. The Taliban were woefully unprepared.
When such a big incident happens in any country, there is a need for help from other countries. It is very difficult for us to be able to respond to this huge incident. We ask from the international community to cooperate with us and continue their support.
It was all up to the aid agencies. They had to race against the clock to rescue survivors, to shelter the children, and also find hospital beds for the wounded. It was going to be an uphill task. Most countries stepped up to help Afghanistan. They included India, China, Turkey, Iran, Europe. All of them send crucial emergency aid. But officials say it may not be enough. The scale of the disaster requires much more assistance.
This aid is not sufficient. We request the international organizations to help us. If God willing, we will transparently distribute all the aid to needy people.
Resources are simply not available, like helicopters to transport the injured, medicines for on-site treatment, or vehicles to reach the remote corners. Afghanistan's east is an unforgivable landscape. Traveling there during normal times is hard enough. After the earthquake, it's nearly impossible.
The roads are poor, even in the best of time. And so having a humanitarian operation put in place is going to be immediately challenged by the lack of easy access to the area, to the region. And I think that's going to be probably one of the big challenges.
This is not Afghanistan's first earthquake. This region, coast, has reported 50 tremors in the last 5 years. The reason? Its location. Afghanistan is located on the Alpine belt. It is the second most seismically active region in the Pacific Ring of Fire. The Alpine is almost 15,000 kilometers long. It runs from Eurasia to Afghanistan to the Himalayas, all the way into the Pacific. Also, the Earth's crust is more active below Afghanistan. This is where three important tectonic plates meet: the Arabian, the Indian, and the Eurasian tectonic plates. As a result, seismic activity is more than normal. Does that mean this disaster was unavoidable? Well, not the scale of it. Afghanistan's infrastructure is decades behind the latest techniques. The buildings are still made of mud, sort of like sitting ducks when earthquakes hit. Years of war have made infrastructure development impossible, and from the looks of it, that will continue. Rebuilding from this earthquake will be hard for Afghanistan. The Taliban don't have money to invest, so once again, the global community will have to step in. But locals have flagged another problem with reconstruction.
Wood is very expensive. Our houses are gone, destroyed. We are here in the market, but wood is either not available or costs thousands of Afghanis. We have small children and no roofs over our heads. The weather is bad. It's rainy and muddy. Flour is not available, and where it is available, a sack costs 6,000 to 7,000 Afghanis. Our houses are destroyed.
It could be years before this region is rebuilt, but rebuilding it right is the big challenge, making sure that such disasters will not happen again. That involves making smart investments, roping in experts and aid agencies. But does the regime in Kabul have the will to do it, or indeed the skills? Only time will tell. South Asia Bureau, WION, World is One.
Bangladesh is home to more than 200 rivers and tributaries. They are the lifeline of the country's 169 million people. But lately, some of those rivers are dying. The reason? Bangladesh's booming garment industry. The same industry has propelled millions out of poverty. However, the economic success has come at a cost. The once mighty rivers are a shadow of their former shelves.
They call it the new Asian tiger, a rising economic power erected from the chaos of civil war and genocide. In 50 years, Bangladesh has defied many expectations. They were written off as a basket case. But today, they are growing at almost 7% per annum. A lot of credit goes to the garment industry, especially fast fashion. Bangladesh is home to more than 4,000 cloth factories. They make up 80% of the country's annual exports. Total revenue, almost $40 billion. Hidden behind this dazzling profit is an incalculable cost: the death of Bangladesh's rivers.
Rivers are dead. Many of the rivers are dead. Rivers around the capital are dead. Rivers around the big cities are dead. Now the rivers across the country are going to be dying. So these unregulated industrialization and pollution, if we can't stop it, then you must find all the rivers are becoming drain of the country.
The locals blame the garment factories, their toxic mix of dyes, their tanning acids. Where do you think all these chemicals end up? In the rivers. Water samples have revealed a dangerous situation. Chromium and cadmium levels are over 6 times the WHO's safe limits. Both substances are used in leather tanning. Chromium causes cancer, while cadmium is linked to lung and kidney damage.
Even a decade ago, the water was usable, but now it is totally polluted. We can't bathe or use the water. There are barely any fish. It even ruins most of the crops.
Bangladesh is crisscrossed by more than 200 waterways. They nourish the bustling cities of this country, including the capital Dhaka. It was founded 400 years ago on the banks of Buriganga. The once mighty river is now a shadow of its former self.
The Buriganga River doesn't have the same water level like it did before. It is dying every day. During low tide, you can see the water level dropping to a dangerously low level. The tide system has been ruined as well.
Why don't the locals say anything? They do. But their voice is drowned by the powerful garment lobby. Even politicians have a stake in the fast fashion industry. Sometimes they run the factories.
Unfortunately, the laws we have related to the punishment of the environmental criminals, the law is very weak and it cannot prevent them. So we have to go around the law. We may have to go for that name and shame approach and try to change the law and raise public awareness.
Around half the population here depends on rivers for farming. If the water is polluted, their crops will fail. Yet, garment factories get a free ride. The big ones point to their so-called green certificates. But what about the smaller ones? They run on razor-thin margins. For these smaller factories, wastewater treatment is not possible. The solution? Government intervention. Bangladesh must prioritize sustainable development. It must balance economic growth with ecological conservation. South Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
A big power political rivalry is unfolding in the Himalayan state of Nepal, the United States versus China. The Chinese government is accusing the U.S. of luring Nepal into a military alliance. How has the U.S. responded to this charge? How did tiny Nepal land in the middle of a geopolitical rivalry? Our next report tells you.
When big powers clash, it is seldom on home turf. They fight in foreign theatres like Cuba or Korea or Vietnam. Today, a big power rivalry is unfolding in South Asia, in Nepal at the Himalayan foothills. The main players are China and the United States. The conflict is over a US military scheme. It's called the SPP, the State Partnership Program. Critics call it a quasi-military alliance of the United States. Here's how their website defines it. The SPP is a key US security cooperation tool facilitating cooperation across all aspects of international civil-military affairs and encouraging people-to-people ties at the state level. Washington markets it as a disaster readiness program. So far, 93 countries have already signed up. Nepal first applied in 2015. After the deadly earthquakes, it was looking to boost its disaster readiness. The SPP seemed like a good option, but there was no reply from the United States. In 2019, Nepal tried again. This time the US agreed, and the reason was China. Nepal has emerged as a key Indo-Pacific battleground between China and the United States. The current government has already approved one US project, the MCC, or the Millennium Challenge Corporation. The MCC deals mainly with infrastructure projects. So Washington thought, why not capitalize on the momentum? Perhaps strike two deals in quick succession. The SPP has two major components. One, a $500 million fund transfer, and two, provision of non-lethal weapons. Needless to say, China had a meltdown. Their state media accused the US of endangering Himalayan peace. Some ruling coalition partners also demurred. The result? Nepal's cabinet dropped the SPP plan immediately. China has reacted positively to the news. Here's what their spokesperson had to say. Various political parties and factions, the government, the army and people across the Nepalese society see the SPP as a military and security initiative closely linked to the Indo-Pacific strategy. They consider it against the national interests of Nepal and its long-held non-aligned balanced foreign policy to be part of the SPP. The US, on the other hand, is sulking. Their embassy tried to clarify America's position online. The State Partnership Program is not and has never been a security or military alliance. The United States is not seeking a military alliance with Nepal. Whatever the nuances, the deal has fallen through. This time, China has scored a symbolic victory. It has kept Nepal away from a US alliance. But great power rivalries do not end after round one. This Himalayan theatre has many more chapters left. South Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
India is among the biggest internet markets in the world. Average use per month is almost 14 gigabytes, but the speed remains a major issue. India ranks 115th when it comes to internet speed. To solve that, the government is all set to roll out the 5G network. How fast will India's 5G network be? Are the customers ready for this new digital revolution?
Internet has become a basic human right today. Good connectivity is key to our lives, our finances, our travel, our food, and even our health. So every country is on a mission to boost internet services, basically to offer faster and more reliable connections. India too is on a similar mission. Later this year, India will be rolling out 5G internet. The cabinet has already cleared the spectrum auctions. The bid applications will be considered from July 26th. The government's target is ambitious. 5G in at least 20 to 25 cities by the end of 2022. The question is, will it change India's internet landscape? 5G is the fifth generation of mobile connectivity, the successor to our current stable 4G. More than 60 countries already use this network, which means India is late to the party. By 2025, the world is expected to have 1.9 billion 5G users. The expected speed, a whopping 10 gigabits per second. This could be a game changer for India. It is among the heaviest data users in the world. The average Indian burns up around 17 GB, but speed has been an issue. India ranks 115th on the internet speed list. The average speed is about 14 megabits per second. Compare that to the United States, where average download speed is around 100 megabits. So the gap is very wide and hopefully 5G will plug it. In the first stage, the 5G spectrum in 9 frequency bands will be introduced. The likes of Reliance Jio, Airtel, Vodafone Idea are expected to scoop up the bands. Total revenue between 80,000 and 100,000 crore rupees. That is what the government is expecting. But rollout is step 1. To access 5G, you need 5G phones. And that means a major grassroots overhaul. Some customers were ready for this transition. Last year, Indians bought 30 million 5G phones. Remember, this is even before the auctions. By the end of this year, that number could grow. Experts say India could have 80 million 5G phones by December. Companies are already pushing new products in anticipation of this demand. The goal will be to make 5G a basic service all over the country. Like 4G today, more than 99% of India is covered by 4G internet. Penetration and access will be key to India's 5G mission. And what about prices? The 4G rollout was all about price wars. But this time, things are more stable. India is already among the cheapest places to buy data. You get 1 GB for 7 rupees, which is around $0.09. Chances are 5G prices will also follow the same trend. South Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
For the last few months, Sri Lanka has been gripped by intense protests. However, most of them have been centered in the country's south. The north has been relatively calm, and there is a reason for that. Northern Sri Lanka is home to the Tamil minority. They say protesting is not an option for them. If they do, the army will crack down with full force. Our next story tells you how the Rajapaksa regime has widened Sri Lanka's north-south divide.
This is Gold Face, one of the most beautiful pieces of real estate in Colombo. Also the site of massive protests. For months now, Gold Face has looked like this. Packed with hundreds of protesters, slogans echoing in the air. And occasionally, violent scuffles. In these streets, you can feel the outrage, the deep disappointment and anger towards the ruling Rajapaksa clan. That outrage is open and vocal. People are not scared to criticize the president anymore. Politicians, students, doctors, even cricketers are taking on President Gotabaya. But in northern Sri Lanka, the scene is very different. The streets are a lot more calm. The people are a lot more patient. Not because they don't share the outrage, but because protesting is not an option for them. Northern Sri Lanka is home to the Tamil minority. They number close to 3 million, making up 15% of Sri Lanka's total population. Their story is one of neglect and oppression. Even after the civil war that continues, you will find long ration lines in the north. You will hear stories of shortages and desperation. But you will not find the protests, not like the one in Gold Face. Because even protesting is a luxury here. The Gold Face movement is made up of the Sinhala majority. It is primarily a Buddhist movement, so the security forces respond with patience and restraint. Not the case when Tamil protest. Protests in the north are often met with brutal crackdowns, a staple of rubber bullets, tear gas and baton charging. Sometimes the judiciary intervenes. They ban a protest even before it starts. This north-south divide is not new. The Rajapaksas used it to boost their political career. Mahinda Rajapaksa was president during the worst civil war crimes. His trusted military chief, the current president Gotabaya, both men led the bloody campaign against the Tamils. The war may have ended in 2009, but the discrimination did not. Southern Sri Lanka got all the money and investments, the airports, the highways, the hospitals, while northern Sri Lanka was left to fend for itself. And the war crimes? Long forgotten. Hundreds of Tamil men who disappeared during the war are still missing. Are they dead, in prison or in exile? The government will not say. The Rajapaksas used the racial divide to conquer Sri Lanka. And for years, The people played along until it hit their wallet. The new protests are a lot more inclusive. Some groups are making concerted efforts to rope the Tamils in to make this a wider movement. Yet, the horrors of the past restrain the Tamil community. They too need food and fuel, but more importantly, they want their voices to be heard. They want a new Sri Lanka that fights for their rights. South Asia Bureau, WION World is One.
That's all we have for you on this episode of South Asia Diary. We'll be back next week with a brand new lineup of stories. Until then, stay safe. I am Mariam Wardak, and you are watching WION World is One.